Hey everybody, welcome to Samson, a Tyndalston Story, a game you probably haven't heard about or even seen. At least that's what my community post and my poll about it suggested. It suggested that you guys have no goddamn idea what Samson is. Unless you've been trolling me. But you guys wouldn't do that.
Sure, buddy.
Regardless though, I thought the best way to start today's video is to introduce it a bit, show what it is, and then move on to the problems that I have with this game because I got a lot I have to get out of my chest, fellas, I'm not gonna lie. I'm legitimately pissed off. At first I was being actually very lenient and understanding of the game because of the situation that it's in, more on that later. But by the end, it exhausted my patience and goodwill, even at the low price of $25. One of the studio's leads, the big dog at the top if I'm not mistaken, commented on that price point by saying that they would rather over-deliver at $25 than under-deliver at $70, citing that they want to respect players and their time. But after having poured around 24 hours into this game across 2 playthroughs, I don't see what's being over-delivered here. At best, they delivered something in a very rough shape. That's about it. To consider a higher price for this game at the state that it released in would be insane. So sit back, relax, but not too much if you're driving, and let's get into this. What is Samson? It's a gritty, story-driven third-person action-adventure game in the crime genre. In other words, it's a GTA type of game. And that's about the farthest I'll go with bringing up other games as comparisons. Some people got hyped and were calling this a Sleeping Dogs type of game before launch, getting that hype train going because the combat is melee only. But sadly, nah, that ain't it. Regardless, as a GTA style of game, I had to give it a go myself. The thing about Samson though is that it's made by a brand new studio called Liquid Swords. There's some noteworthy developers in this studio, like some OGs from the studio that brought us Just Cause. But regardless, we're talking about a small indie scale game here. Samson is very limited in various ways. I'll talk more about the studio and the shaky history of the game in the last topic of this video, in the conclusion. Timestamps will be in the description if you want to jump around. For example, there are no guns in this game. The entire thing is focused on melee and car combat. That's how you sort things out in this game. The combat is meant to feel brutal. Close quarters, brawler style fist fights with some weapons mixed in, like sticks, baseball bats, a big heavy wrench, a mace, whatever you can find. You can also throw stuff like bottles or bricks. The hits are meant to feel crunchy and carry impact, whether that is you hitting the enemies or getting your ass kicked. This isn't the type of game where hitting things feels weightless, it's meant to be hefty. There's also a small degree of physics involved where enemies react and take damage from being thrown against surfaces. Even more so if the surfaces are breakable. For example, you can toss enemies at stacks of barrels or tires, and if they fall on them, it'll deal damage, or throw somebody into a table or a chair. If it breaks, it'll deal damage. You can also throw them over ledges and have them fall from great heights, or even throw them at other enemies' bodies on the floor, making them trip and fall down. The car combat is basic but serviceable. You have a ramming button, and in order to disable cars, you can drive into them or ram them from the side, but it matters from which direction or which part of the car you're slamming against. To truly do big damage, you gotta try to go for the tires or a powerful enough hit that'll flip the cars over. Otherwise, it can be a bit wonky and inconsistent. Like, I've had it happen to me before where I was charging my car into the back of an enemy's car and I'm the one who took damage. And I've also had the opposite happen before where I am the one who slammed up against the wall, my bad, and so my car was stopped. An enemy's car was coming from the same road and he slammed against my car and he's the one who took all the damage. I didn't take any damage at all and the enemy car got totaled. And so sometimes I don't know when these things are intended or when it's just the buggy nature of the game, because we're going to get into bugs and overall jank in a bit, and there's a lot of that in this game. These two sides of it, the melee combat and the vehicle combat, are the core of the game though. No matter if you're doing side jobs or main story missions, these are the things you're going to be doing in this game nearly every time in some small variety of manners. So let's get into that right now. This game doesn't have missions or day and night cycles in the classic GTA way. In Samson you have 3 times of day, noon, evening and night. Doing a job moves time forward, and at the end of the day, at night, you gotta go back home to sleep. Besides the main story, there's an additional debt mechanic involved. This is what forces you to have to do jobs in the game to earn money. It's because at the end of each day, you'll have a set debt payment that you have to make. It starts at $1,000 and goes up as the game moves forward. If at the end of each day you haven't got enough money to pay the daily debt, then you have one more day to make up for it and get back in the green. If you stay in the red, mobsters will start sending loan sharks to your place. And if you continue in the red, the game will give you a strike. If you get 3 strikes, it's game over. You and your sister get taken out.
Hey Stu, your rent's due, motherfucker!
Oh yeah, by the way, there's a sister, we'll get there in a second. The jobs available are very limited and get repetitive very fast. At first I thought that they were generated, but actually they're not. They were handcrafted, like these are the same jobs in my first playthrough and the second playthrough. The types of jobs are beatdown, where you go somewhere on the map and you fight like a wave of 10 dudes, contracts, where you go somewhere on the map and take a guy out, which sometimes is surrounded by 10 dudes as well. Other times it's a bit different. For instance, in one of them I had to get in a taxi car to pick the guy up, drive him into the boonies and whack him. You might be sitting there and going, oh, that's kinda cool, but the truth is that it isn't. It shows some originality and it shows some potential of creativity of what could have been, but it doesn't really actually work. The taxi isn't even an active thing in the world. There are no taxis anywhere. It's just a car that's parked, it's a taxi car. It's parked in a location on the map and you have a waypoint to go pick it up. There's no dialogue or anything like that to make this feel like you're being a total badass and executing a cool hit undercover as a taxi driver. Contracts should have been all about this, but instead, most of them are just, you go somewhere and you fight like 10 dudes and then you fight the main dude. There's also a type of job named Shadow, where you're supposed to follow someone, make sure to not be too crazy or whatever so you're not spotted, and then sometimes you gotta whack them too. And sometimes there's 10 dudes in there as well, you gotta whack them as well, and then the main guy. The core is sadly always the same. There's no creativity or tools that are handed to you for you to handle in your own way. Everything is scripted to go down a very certain way and very specifically, and sometimes I've been fighting and there's like a radius in which you can find, and sometimes there's a lot of people on the screen, and so I try to movement myself, and if you step outside of that radius, the mission fails automatically, even if you're still there fighting. So yeah, very limited, very restrictive stuff. While I can appreciate that the developers thought this through enough to at least in their own limited way try and offer a variety of scripted ways to do a thing, it still didn't do enough to differentiate between them, because they're contextless. For example, the guy that we take out with a taxi, he's just a random NPC wearing a hood. There's no cutscene, no context, not even a note trying to do some important details to, I don't know, just set up the job that you're doing, like give you some kind of context, like what's this hit? Who's this guy? Why do we need to impersonate a taxi driver? His dialogue in the taxi was even just generic NPC dialogue. Just, again, I see what they're trying to do, but it just doesn't help defeat the monotony and repetitiveness of the game. They're trying to think of cool structures to add to missions, but everything else around them is just vacant. It doesn't even do enough to serve as a band-aid when you're already like 3-4 hours in, and you realize that most of the jobs, like 99% of them, are you doing the exact same thing over and over. For example, there's this other job type called Jack, where you go into an area and you have to steal stuff. Usually it's like 4 or 5 little boxes that you gotta pick up from the enemy outpost, but once again in these places you gotta fight off like 10 dudes. Actually make it like 15 or 20 in some of them. And by the way, sometimes you'll get beatdown or contract type of jobs that send you to the exact same spots. It's just that instead of picking up boxes and fighting dudes, you're just fighting dudes. This is more of a nitpick because I don't have that much of a problem with some locations repeating sometimes, but what I do have an issue with is when the combat is so bare bones and repetitive and you have to do so much of it. Vehicle jobs are a similar type of situation. You got the getaway jobs where you go somewhere, a criminal buddy of yours runs out and gets into your car, and then you get police coming after you, and you gotta lose them and drive your buddy to safety.
Cops, of course.
Delivery jobs are generally jobs where you gotta drive into several locations on a timer to do deliveries. Sometimes there's police, sometimes there's not. Takedown jobs are my favorite. You get in your car and defeat enemy cars on the road. Sometimes there's a timer, other times there's just one car, or other times like 3 or 4 cars instead. That's it. Oh, and there's one more, which is street trials, which, well, it's a time trial. It's like a race against the clock. That's it. Always with no context, it's just jobs on the map that you gotta do. There's also an action point system that limits the amount of jobs you can do per day, but that's not very important, so we're gonna skip it. Just generally, you can do 3 jobs a day, maybe 4. There's ways to get extra cash and action points in the open world by finding gangsters hanging out and basically just taking them out. Doing that might drop a note with a location to burn a stash of drugs that gives you extra cash and gives you an extra action point, which sometimes allows you to do 1 extra job at the end of the day to get yourself some extra cheese so you can pay off your debt to the mob.
Where's the money, Lebowski?
That about does it for everything that you can do in this small open world. Only other thing is there's the small little interactions with NPCs that you can find while exploring, which give you hints or additional information on stuff that's going on in the story. I'll bring those up later. But that aside, there's nothing else. There's no minigames, there's no stores, there's no enemy hideouts, no collectibles, no rewards, etc. There's no activities whatsoever of any kind. Not even ones that should have been there to give you more mechanics or features or just more stuff to, embrace in this world. I'll develop on this later. You can't even get too crazy in this game while exploring, because if you die, you lose all the money you earned that day. Like sometimes you might see something like a ramp and you might think, oh, let me try this. But it may not be a good idea. I jumped a ramp once, I landed on an overpass and my car was busted. I didn't want to run the entire length of the overpass, so I found a little area where maybe I could parkour my way to the edge of a building and then descend to the floor safely. But controls in this game are dog shit, so instead of jumping, I did a tiny little hop and fell to the ground, dying and losing all my money that day, and I had money backed up from previous days. Same happened several times while trying to climb things too. Your character just can't handle most surfaces that aren't the ground in this game, so you'll just look like you're flying in place and then the game kills you with the text stuck on screen. Only good thing about these occasions is that when you die because of being stuck, the game doesn't take your money away from you. But you do lose money when it's just the game spazzing out. Also happened while I was driving at very high speeds going from A to B. I activated the nitros and I drove at full speed towards cars on the bridge. I'm just trying to have some goddamn fun. And my car just clipped through the floor on the bridge and I fell in the water. Like, what the fuck is going on? It's not just the controls that are bad, it's just everything with the movement is janky as hell. Okay, fellas, and I'm just gonna say it, this goes for everything. Everything I described a bit ago about the melee combat and the car combat, all of that was true when it's running on all cylinders. But most of the time that I played this, it was not running on all cylinders. Most of the time, this game is extremely wonky, awkward, and janky as shit. The amount of bugs I've had playing this have demonstrated that this game was definitely not ready to come out. The feel of the combat itself is abysmal and will definitely drive out a bunch of new players, especially when you're fighting a bunch of enemies at the same time. Dodging feels terrible, parrying is inconsistent, heavy attacks are slow and cumbersome, the combat moves don't flow together so you can't really do combos. I'll develop more on this in a second, but worst of all, you heal in combat by taking painkillers, a la Max Pain, but the amount of times I've had to spam the painkiller button in a panic because the stupid character just doesn't do it is ridiculous. Like sometimes you just get stuck and you're just hammering the painkiller painkiller button over and over again, and this moron doesn't move. Which is why that quote from the developer pisses me off. The one about over-delivering at a low price. You're not really over-delivering anything when the game controls and handles itself like an alpha or beta version of a tech demo. It's kinda like if a pizza man shows up at your house and he's like, "Hey, $5 and I'll give you this pizza box," but you can't open it until you see it. And so I'm like, I don't know about that, $5, what's the catch? And the pizza man goes, "Well, I'd rather over-deliver at $5 than under-deliver at 30. So, whatever, just give you, it's in your hands." And so I give him $5 and I open the pizza box and it's just crusts in there. And like maybe some of the crusts have cheese on them, maybe it's those ones that have like cheesy bites or whatever, and they got like cheese on them, and and so it's not like terrible. But at the same time, you're not really doing me a favor either, you know what I mean? There are things that I would love to praise about this game, chief among them being the city. I actually love Tyndalston. I think the place is just perfect. Like you take a drive around these areas and you can just tell that this was handcrafted with a lot of love and heart. Plus it harkens back to the good old days when these GTA style of games, and even GTA itself, had settings that felt more like late 90s or early 2000s time period. Which for me is the perfect setting for these things. I don't like the modern settings of GTA 5 and of course the upcoming GTA 6. I wish so much that they would go backward instead of forward, but it is what it is. Tyndalston is rough, like it is genuinely an American shithole. And I say that in the best way possible because this makes for a perfect setting for this type of crime open world game. Beyond the style of the setting, another thing that is genuinely impressive is the detail. They shoved so much detail into this playable world. The place genuinely exudes personality. There's no corner of this place that you go and you see like a vacant parking lot or a vacant back alley or whatever with nothing in it. Like everything is detailed. Everything was paid attention to. And a big piece of credit also goes for the composer. The music in this game is frankly great. And when I learned who the composer was, I was like, of course! It's Jesper Kyd, probably the first composer whose name I've ever learned and memorized in my life back when I was a kid obsessing over the Assassin's Creed soundtrack. But again, man, just despite wanting to praise this so much, despite other aspects of it also being impressive, such as the vehicle modeling, like damn, there's not a lot of cars in this game, there's like 10 different models give or take, but damn do they look good and detailed. And the way the damage is displayed is pretty dope too, but at the end of the day, it's impossible for the frustration over the game's brokenness and repetitiveness to not win over these small positive points that I brought up now. And that's the real tragedy here. I also haven't mentioned much in regards to performance, but Steam reviews are noting performance issues. This is an Unreal Engine 5 game. As usual, they tend to have this issue. I personally can't say I've had any performance problems myself while playing. I did have a couple of crashes, but overall it was fine. However, my PC was running very hot during my play sessions, hotter than any other game that I've played so far, and I've played a lot of Crimson Desert. It's a much bigger scale game with a lot more going on, and I felt like my PC struggles less to run Crimson Desert than this. So that's another thing to add to the pile and for you guys to be wary of if you decide to give it a go. Before we get to the real sauce, I'd like to touch on some annoyances with the basic stuff in the game. In the previous thing I mentioned how the combat was rough. Here's why. The combat is crunchy, so when you get hit, you also get interrupted, stunned, or tossed around to the ground. So getting crowded by enemies is a massive pain in the ass, but as usual, I tend to blame myself first and try to adapt before complaining. But in this game, it's just genuinely bad, because for example, if you're crowded, the answer is to reposition, but repositioning feels like ass because the dodge mechanic in this game is awfully animated. It's rough, sticky, and restrictive. You can't reposition any other way. Walking is too slow, you'll just get hit, which stops your movement. Speaking of rough, so is the parry mechanic. There's partial parries and full parries depending on how well you time it, but it's so wonky that sometimes the animation doesn't play and you just stand there. Other times you're clipping into the enemy's body. Other times it flings enemies across the street. Another way to create space is to grab enemies and throw them to get them to stumble all over each other. It buys you some time and space to breathe, but grabbing enemies and tossing them is awful too. Same type of issues where it's just wonky, man. It's just the whole damn game. Everything is wonky. Another way to create space is to throw around haymakers, which tends to get enemies to take a couple steps back. In other words, heavy attacks, but they're so insanely slow. The wind up on a heavy hit makes heavy hits not even worth it over light hits. Just punch them 2 or 3 times in the amount of time it takes to do one heavy hit. You'll do more damage with regular punches. A big major issue is combat moves don't flow together. You can't really set up combos and the combat system never goes anywhere either. When it comes to heavy attacks, you can't string anything together at all. And you can't mix heavy and light attacks either. And when it comes to light attacks, you can kinda throw 3 of them in quick succession, but there's no fluidity, so combos aren't a thing. It just feels like you have a light punch button and a heavy punch button, and whenever you click them, you just do one punch individually every time. It doesn't feel good at all, and after a bunch of hours playing the game where you're just constantly being thrown into combat, it gets old quick. And you never get to the point where this unlocks in the skill tree, it's just not in the game. So don't go into this expecting Sleeping Dogs or a Yakuza type of game, because one of the most frustrating things in this game is that despite wanting to be a brawler style game, where the only combat in it is always hand-to-hand fights, the combat system is bare bones and doesn't include any cool shit. No big combos to learn and make fights more responsive and exciting, no execution moves. I mean, there's a thing where if you deplete an enemy's posture bar, you can press one button and take them out with a finisher, which is animated, and there's various of them centered mostly on, you know, doing a knockout punch or kicking an enemy's leg and then doing the knockout punch, or grabbing an enemy's neck and, you know, snapping that shit, you know, it's basic stuff like that. However, there's no combo moves and no execution style moves the way that you see in Batman or Mad Max, for example, or the environmental takedowns in Sleeping Dogs or Yakuza. It really is a very bare bones system, fellas. I'm sorry to say, the skill tree in this game is mostly composed of small little improvements, like being able to do more damage at lower health, or doing more damage with your car, bonuses for paying your debt at the end of the day, being able to carry extra painkillers, having your weapon have more durability, you know, that kind of thing. Small bonuses to make your life easier, but nothing that changes or adds to the core system of the melee or the car combat. Your first fight in this game is going to be exactly the same as your last fight in this game. Something sorely missing here would have been, for example, some way to unlock a way to fix your car, even if it's just a little bit, since it takes quite a lot of damage, and then you gotta go spend money at a garage to fix it. Or of course, new moves for the combat. Not everything has to be a copy of the Arkham game's combat, you know, I get that, but like, when your game is centered on melee combat and this is your combat system, you need to add more variety, dude. It's one thing if you have guns like this game was supposed to have in its original vision, before that getting removed, we'll get there later. At that point, you know, the melee system is not really required, it's just a thing on the side that you can make use of. But when the entire game is meant to be a brawler, and you have zero variety, zero progression, zero special moves to unlock or abilities to do, It's just unfitting and honestly even unacceptable. The developers themselves have already come out and admitted that the current state of the game is unacceptable, and they will be working hard at fixing it, polishing things up, and I guess potentially improve existing systems, maybe add a few new things. But right now, as of the making of this video, the game itself is very rough, but even if it was fixed, this would still feel unacceptable. The foundation is bland and there's nothing else to work towards. The coolest brawler style combat that I've ever played is probably Mad Max. Bits of that system on this game would have been amazing. In Mad Max, for example, the counters were much more responsive, and if a low health enemy attacked you and you countered them perfectly, he'd just take them out with a finisher. Plus there was this mechanic where Max would enter this enraged mode. In Samson you can also enter a Spartan Rage type of mode where you do more damage. That's it though. It's good in a tight spot, but whatever. Back to Mad Max and what it should feel like. It would trigger during fights when you were just beating the shit out of your foes. And then when you held down the attack button for charged attacks, Max would have these rough and brutal wrestling moves like picking up enemies and slamming them on the ground, or doing backbreakers, breaking their arms, or devastating drop kicks. You know, it was rough and gritty, and man, if this game had that system, it would have gone a long way to make these longer fights towards the end feel so much better, because you literally are being thrown into fights against 10 dudes all the time. Sadly though, it's not just the combat that doesn't have anything to build towards. It's the vehicle and the world in general too. You have a car that belongs to you, and besides taking it to the garage to fix it or fill the nitro back up, you can't do anything else to it. Some customization would have been great here. It even feels like the game is built for it. You can steal and drive other cars, which is something I did very often to save money on having to fix my own, but Samson's car is definitely significant to him. It's his baby. So in a way, it feels like another unfinished aspect of the game that you can't build on. His apartment is also something that they could have added customization to, maybe even a couple of distractions in it. I think the strengths that Samson has and should be built upon are its main focuses, so the combat, the car, and the atmosphere. When it comes to the city, I got nothing to complain about. As expressed before, they killed it here, and Jasper Kidd killed it with the music. I mean, hey, if they could add some activities here and there, I wouldn't complain. Like, I don't know, maybe a place to play bowling or play pool, maybe get some card games, you know, shit like that. Maybe add rewards to completing some set of challenges in them, like a bowling jacket for high scoring it in bowling, maybe a pool cue weapon to your hideout every morning for high scoring a pool game. Street races is probably too much to ask, so I won't go into that, but at least small things. You don't need big shit either, to be honest. Like, the game's story is small, you're not going to be playing this for 20 hours. But my point is that one of this game's strengths is its atmosphere. There's a strong foundation here already for immersion because you have this heavily atmospheric city area to cruise around, and you have a time-passing system with an obligation to go home every day. If you invest in small things to tie us down to its world even more, like vehicle customization, some side activities beyond the jobs for leisure, some outfits or clothes to unlock or buy through side activities or the money that we earn, and a way to fix our shithole apartment and get it looking actually good bit by bit, I mean, that would just be a huge W. You don't need to add new crazy things to the game, you just need to embellish what's already there. It would also give people reasons to keep playing after they pay the debt, because in my first playthrough I finished paying the debt, which is $100,000, my sister was freed from the mob, and then I had nothing to do except finish the story, because there's no more point to earning money anymore since there's nothing to buy or work for. Let me fix my apartment with money or something. Let me have outfits or car customizations, not only give me stuff to do after the debt is paid, but frankly even before the debt. Like, I'd love to have taken it slower in this game and engage in more activities, unlock more stuff, work towards having a better apartment, etc. by not dumping all my money into the debt. I finished paying the debt very quickly in my first playthrough. But after finishing, there was just nothing to do anymore. There was no reason to keep going. The jobs just became tedious, repetitive chores that I was forced to engage in, so the game wouldn't just end for me with those 3 strikes. I really wanted to like this game, but again, between the jank, the repetition, and the feeling of things being missing, the frustration won over the small things that I enjoyed. But anyway, let's move on to the story now, which was probably the main thing that got me pissed off. Well, sort of. Stay with me, fellas. So when it comes to the story and why it ended up pissing me off, I kinda have to take you guys on a ride and show you exactly why. Sort of go mission by mission. But first I'm gonna show you this post. You might have even seen it if you're following me on X. I won't read it, just know that what happened here was, I was a few hours into the game now, and after doing a couple of really major story missions, it felt like the story was picking up quite a lot. Things were getting very interesting, with a deep web of conspiratory stuff going on behind the scenes of the criminal underbelly of Tyndalston. Basically one small event at the start of the game being tied to really big major stuff that even went beyond the petty crime life in the old neighborhood. So because the story was growing on me and the game was giving me the idea that all that I had done so far had only been the intro, it felt like the positives and negatives of the game were finally balancing out, especially for a $25 price tag. The only thing I lamented in that post was the time that it had taken to get there, because we were about 6 to 8 hours in a relaxed playthrough with some exploration, and so if it takes you this long to get things really going, you're going to inevitably lose players along the way who are going to get bored or annoyed by the repetition of the jobs and the monotonous story with no cool cutscenes or anything. Then I ended the post by saying something like, "Oh boy, hopefully at least the story will be really good from here on out," and then I took a break, had dinner, etc. And when I came back to continue the story, I did like one more mission and the goddamn thing just ended. This pissed me off like you wouldn't believe, because I felt played. I felt like things were finally getting somewhere. There's something big that I'm invested into, and then the shit is just over and everything that was set up is just nothing happens. It's ignored, you know, it just ended. Like an idiot, I was also expecting a new region in the world to open up. Now some of you, even the developers, might think that this is unreasonable, especially at $25, and I can understand that to some extent, but hear me out. They said over-deliver, so the entire time that I'm playing this wonky-ass game with bare-bones combat, repetitive jobs with no context, no scenes, no nothing, day in, day out, doing the same jobs with zero change and nothing to work towards, in my mind I'm thinking that its strengths lie elsewhere. After all, if it was 40 or 50 bucks instead, never mind even the 70 that the developer mentioned, then of course I'd expect much more than this. Way more. If this game had released at a higher price tag, I would have gone nuclear. Also, the story was alluding to it, because we were moving up in the food chain, so to speak. We were getting involved with high rollers, dangerous people with power and money, which would have made sense to be centralized in the main city area that we see in the distance rather than the poor shithole that we are at. Also, the map itself, dude, like it looks like it's suggesting that those roads will open up and the rest up top will be playable, which honestly isn't even my fault either, because if you look into the game's history, you will learn that a lot of it got cut out. This was initially going to be a much bigger game. But anyway, never mind that, let's just look at what we have instead, so let's get into the meat of the story. You are Samson. You look way younger than the picture in the game, by the way. This guy looks old as f***. You're actually much younger. I don't know why, doesn't matter. Anyway, you're from this crappy place called Tyndalston. You grew up poor and struggling like everyone else, and you got into this rough life to survive. You're part of an outfit of small-time thugs led by a dude named Carter. He acts like a fixer, you know, he gets you jobs, he tries to keep the old neighborhood afloat, and he manages his territory. A few years ago, you had made a name for yourself as a great driver, and an opportunity showed itself to you in the mainland, which I assume is the main city in the distance. St. Louis, perhaps? Either way, it don't matter. Nobody wanted you to go, said that it was stupid, too dangerous, too much heat, but you went anyway and it was a disaster. You ended up in prison and the St. Louis mob lost a lot of money. They were gonna shank you in the prison, but your sister stepped in, offered to trade her place with you, and you would go out and make money for them to pay off the debt, with her acting as collateral. And so the deal was struck and you went back to Tyndalston with the $100,000 debt that you have to pay off day by day. So your sister is being held by the St. Louis mob, she has zero privacy, is always being watched and being forced to cook their books on the side in addition to what you gotta do to pay off your debt. So, you know, Samson goes back home and decides to join the Mr. Beast games. So Samson goes back home and is taking every damn job that Courier can get him so that he can make his money and pay off his daily debt. These are the jobs that you do in the game, you know, in the open world. It ends up being a secondary part of it. Jobs are necessary to get money, each day has new jobs. Jobs are of different styles, but you know, they are repetitive and you mostly do the same thing in them, just in different contexts. But you do pick the one that you want to do. Some pay more, others pay less, some are harder, others are easier, you know, so on and so forth. And the rest I already stated earlier. Pay the daily debt. If you fail, you get loan sharks coming after you to kick you in the nuts. If you keep dodging them, you get a strike, 3 strikes, and it's game over. You and your sister get turned into tuna. Earlier in the game though, by day 2, Courier calls you to offer a drink at night at the bar. So off you go to meet with him and catch up with your old buddies Nate and Tommy. Nate is the bartender behind the counter, Tommy is the black dude. Then a shootout happens, which was a deliberate hit against Courier.
Fuck you, Courier! Shit, Nate's been hit!
And that's where the real story begins. Nate gets injured in the attack and you guys are out on the hunt to find out who did it. And this part of the game was just awful. I mean, I get it, every story has to start somewhere, some stories start slower, I'm usually fine with that, but the story needs to go somewhere and actually get developed. But in this case here, it just didn't. Or rather, it did, but it didn't matter. It was abandoned just as soon as it got going. So this part that I'm about to describe to you guys, and that felt so monotone and uninteresting, ended up being the bulk of the game, and therein lies the problem. So first you go track down the car because it was a kitted out ride. You go to a place, ask questions, get a clue, follow it down, find the car, chase it, do a vehicle takedown, and oops, your princess is at another castle because the guy knows nothing. He was just hired by some dude named Dallas. He isn't with the thugs, he's not an underling, he doesn't have any beef with you, he's just a loose end hired to do a job. You have an option to let the guy go or yoink him for revenge. It doesn't matter what you choose, there's literally no difference whatsoever. Next up, you go to another lead in regards to the weapon you used. Your guys know of a weapon dealer, so you go ask him. Same as usual, you get there, you get cucked, and you have to fight like 10 dudes.
I got some questions about a Tech 9 you might have sold.
Nah, this doesn't smell right. Get this fool!
Hit this bitch!
Then he gives up the information. Once again, nothing personal, no connection, just a weapon vendor who sold the weapon in question to a guy named McNamara, whose dad owns a pharmacy. So next up, you go to the pharmacy. You get some ibuprofen for my headache, beat up like 3 or 4 dudes, interrogate the moron there, and guess what, guys? Once again, no beef with you, no deeper information because he's just another random dude hired for a job by another dude, Dallas, which is the same guy the first moron mentioned. So now we finally go to Dallas, down by the docks area. We fight another 10 dudes or more, we interrogate him, and it's even worse. The guy we thought was Dallas isn't Dallas, it's just a random black guy who happens to have like 10 thug dude friends who fought for him for no reason whatsoever. So he tells you who Dallas is and what bar he usually hangs out at. So off we go to the bar. He's not there, but the lady there tells us where to go. Next mission, find Dallas for real this time. We, of course, fight another 10 dudes or so, interrogate him, and it's the same shit again, I kid you not. Yet another middleman who has no beef with you, he was just hired by another guy to set up the hit. Ridiculous, boring repetitiveness apart, it does do one thing correctly though, which is to show how much the main person setting up this hit really wanted to cover his tracks. But of course in the moment, that's not what you're feeling, that's not what you're getting. Presentation is so dry, so bad, there's none of it really, there's no scenes or anything anything, that all you're getting out of this is like a boring goose chase. Like when you're playing a Bethesda game and you have radiant quests which are like, hey, adventurer, go to the cave and kill the guys. And then you do that and you come back and it gives you money and it's like, hey, adventurer, now you're gonna go to this other cave and kill some more guys. You know, that's kind of how it feels. It doesn't feel like there's a major plan in the background that is being orchestrated. But anyway, he reveals who the big boss is, who hired him to set things up, and it was a bigwig in the rival gang organization. So you go there in an actually cool mission where you're exploring these rival back alleys, total gang turf, making your way to a bar to confront the guy and take him out. And by the way, yes, you guessed it, while you're exploring these back alleys, you fight like 10 dudes 3 different times. Which, you know, it's not a problem, it is a brawler game after all, but just like I said in the previous section of the video, I just wish the combat was a bit better, with a bit more variety. When you do confront the rival gang's boss, the story shifts its attention towards this drug that's been going around. The drug's name is White Whisper, and it's basically highly addictive and lethal. It gets people totally zoinked out on it. It's a poison on Tyndalston, and now Carter and your crew turn their attention towards it. In other words, the entire first section about the hit was useless. This is where the real actual story begins. That entire section was totally useless. I mean, it serves to set up some things about the world, I guess, but when the game is so short, now it just feels like padding, so this game wouldn't be like 3 hours long instead. At which point the studio would have had to sell it at $10 to make sure they weren't under-delivering at a high price. You could probably cut this entire section out and you wouldn't miss anything. All you'd need is the shootout at the bar for context later, but that's about it. But anyway, so now you're investigating where does the White Whisper come from and its significance in the streets. This is also visible throughout small encounters you get while exploring, where NPCs will be talking about wanting the drug or about wanting to get clean from it. There's even some small events that you can interact with where you'll find dealers pressuring people to take a sample, or you might find dealers threatening people who got clean from the White Whisper and are spreading word of a cure. You can intervene in all of these and decide to either fight people or, you know, back away, but the story is that basically there's a big drug economy going on and anyone trying to placate it has to go, and this includes Carter and your gang because you guys want this poison off the street. So anyway, you go to a shithole where dealers are selling it to get the name of their supplier. You start getting hints that he's a church guy and he's terrifying, like everyone is afraid of him and what he does to people with his prayer beads. And now we finally have a main villain in this damn game. This is where things began getting a bit more interesting. In the next mission, you go to a bar where this guy is supposed to hang out at, and you find your boy Tommy over there, and he's acting suspicious during dialogue. Now, Tommy isn't a church guy, however, spoiler alert, he is significant in that he betrays us later in the story and is revealed to be involved in all of this. Don't worry, I'm not really spoiling much. Basically, Tommy wants to break into the White Whisper business because he sees our gang's way of life pretty much being over. He sees that these are forces bigger and more powerful than Carter can imagine or fight against. And so it's like, well, you either join them or you get wiped out, and by the end this ends up being true. Like, it generally is insane, the entanglement going on here, the stuff that the game presented by the end, you know, it's precisely the same entanglement this stupid ass game abandons and leaves unsolved. So yeah, thanks for cucking us, Liquid Swords, I really appreciate it. But anyway, everything I said is not revealed yet. Tommy's still your bro, but he was just acting a bit too suspicious with the dialogue. And then he even gives you an option where he says, if you find a stash of Whisper, contact him instead of Carter and he'll make it disappear. Now, I replayed the game specifically to do both options because later in the next mission you do end up finding a stash from the church guy and you do have the option to pick Tommy or Carter to, you know, to inform. First time around I picked Carter because Tommy was acting sus. Second time I picked Tommy. There was no change whatsoever. Literally nothing, guys. I don't know what the point of this was. Like, I don't know what's the point of like LARPing as if there's two paths to take here. This isn't even the illusion of choice. This is just a prompt that like, you have to understand, there's not even a dialogue piece where it's like, hey, Tommy, why didn't you call me? Nothing, guys. There is nothing. It may as well not be in the game. I swear to God, dude, like I understand, dude. You guys lost a lot of money. You had to fire a bunch of people from your studio. You had to put out a game that you admit is unfinished. But come on, guys. You only have one shot at a first impression. And this ain't it, man. Let's just move on. Next up, you wake up with 2 men in your room.
That's suspicious. That's weird.
So you fight them off and interrogate the last guy. By the way, this whole thing, buggy as hell. It took me several tries to get it to work on both my playthroughs, having to quit the game and reload because what kept happening was the last guy would just stand there and no interrogation would happen because you're meant to interrogate the final guy to get the location of where you have to go next. And the damn thing wouldn't move forward. Sometimes I would fight them and they would just flop like a fish, you know, they dead, right, in my living room, so no interaction to be had, and on other occasions the guy would just freeze in place, looking at me and not being interactable. But anyway, when it actually works, you find out that the guys were contracted to rub you off. Okay, hold. That sounded a little bit wrong in the context, so what I'm trying to say is that they were coming for it. Fuck. Oh god, this is bad, man. This is really bad. They were contracted thugs, hired to beat us up. There we go.
Come here, you pirate-looking motherfucker. Now I'm gonna ask you again. Which one of you's bones?
Well, don't just stand there. Kill this asshole. You're finished.
So you go to their hideout. You fight 10 dudes, again, it is what it is. You find their leader, you beat him up, and he reveals it's the church guy who sent him and also where he's located. So next up, it's time to finish the church guy, so big boss time. In this mission, you find his men guarding some cargo containers. You open one up, and there's people in there, zoinked out of their brains. So now things are getting even crazier. We started with a big drug economy centered on a drug that isn't even profitable. I mean, it is addicting. While you're on it, you want to get more, but it takes you out. There's no longevity. It's bad in the long term. It's like live service video games. Hey yo, how's that marathon going, huh? Oh man, already down there? Jesus. But so anyway, now we're no longer even in the drug situation, now we got people in containers waiting to either be shipped out or getting shipped in from somewhere else. Things sure are getting exciting and going deeper, that's what I thought at the time. Then we go after the church guy, turns out that he's just a mobster who is religious and believes that him and his buddies are doing the Lord's work by cleansing the streets of sin and filth. He's a crazy zealot type of character, you know the archetype. When we take him down, we get a hint of where all this crap is culminating. You know, the drugs, the containers, and so much more that was teased by the dude's final moment. So in we go, deep into enemy territory once again, except this time, it's actually kinda nice. I mean, it's still a decrepit place with drugs, poor people, and gangsters, but it looks nicer. And there's one major manor that looks different from the others. Cleaner, no broken windows. We go inside and things get real different real fast. It's the first clean interior you've seen in the entire game. It's the first place that looks tidy. It's also packed with security, and worse, these weird dudes with these white masks. It's a very peculiar place. And the more you explore inside, the weirder it gets. These people got all manner of lavish shit, like fancy furniture, marble statues, you know, like sculptures and everything, immaculate wallpaper, etc. And they're all very well dressed people. Some of them also have dialogue that pertains to eating you or tasting you, you know. It's very vampiric.
No entry. These are the intimate chambers of true initiates only.
Is the lady of the mansion in there?
Miss Nicola Gamby and her special guest are otherwise occupied.
Let me past, or I go through you.
Then they'll have your liver for dessert.
You fight through a bunch of weirdos, get to the final boss in this place, and it's 2 freakazoids hanging around a bathtub full of strawberry juice. By which I do not mean actual strawberry juice, but if I say strawberry juice while showing you guys the clip, maybe YouTube won't age restrict this video like they did to my Rogue Warrior video, which I'm still salty over today. Fucking asshole. Literally just a cool, funny video going over an old 2009 totally innocent video game. Anyway, so let's get to the point, fellas. These people are high society vampires, or, well, you know, they LARP like vampires. Realistically, they're just rich, depraved cannibals who enjoy three main things. Number 1, watching people suffer. Number 2, eating people, and number 3, relishing in the idea of cleansing the streets of Tyndalston so they can build condos and malls and shit. And there's a whole system for it too. This is where things start to connect together, and honestly really well. The drugs turn the place into an even bigger shithole. They get rid of some people, hold them down in poverty and misery, in decrepit positions. Others get straight up yoinked and trafficked to be quote-unquote sacrificed for entertainment, and in the meantime, the vacant lots where people no longer live at because they're either deceased or they are thrown onto the streets where poverty and misery will off them eventually, are being destroyed and turned into new property developments. What I liked about this, and quite a lot to be honest, is that throughout the game, if you explore the city, you can get a lot of hints of stuff like this happening. NPCs have dialogue lines about being thrown out onto the streets, lines about friends or family members disappearing. There's also this weird connection with pest control, where pest control vans are spotted near some buildings, but then the people who lived in those buildings disappear. These vans never have any pest control equipment inside of them, and nobody ever sees any exterminators doing anything. All that is known is that when these vans show up and buildings get locked down, after they leave, nobody ever returns. The people who live there just disappear, and now it's just an empty building. These are things that you can find out by just exploring the world. They're little interactions that add a little bit more to the story.
Funny how the pest control vans turn up right after all the people inside vanish.
For instance, at one point I was exploring a pier and I found a container that I could open. When I opened it, there was a lot of goddamn YouTube, strawberry juice inside. You don't know exactly what you're looking at until you get to reveal and piece everything together, but it was nice to see these little things being put out there in the world for people to find and know that there's something darker going on, something bigger behind the scenes. Makes the world feel more alive and the story feel more real in a way, So hopefully you can understand why I felt so excited about the game's story at that point. It felt like things were finally moving forward, getting really big. Samson himself gets scared, he's not used to this big time stuff. He doesn't know what hornet's nest he just disturbed, and it bothers and scares him, as noted in a couple of dialogues after this mission. I thought that I was just getting started. I thought the real shit began here and we were about to get into some major story involving some very dangerous high-up people, all interconnected in this major conspiracy to basically destroy an entire area of a town with thousands of citizens in the name of property development, profit, and depravity. But nothing happened. Nothing got developed. Nothing more happened beyond this point. After this, you go to sleep, and then you gotta do jobs for a day or two. No main missions in sight, aka just more filler. Then you finally get a new final mission, Carter gives you a call, you go meet with your boys because they got a plan to find out more about this and, get some motion going. So they have you go to a fancy rich boy club and steal two things from there. A floppy disk, which might have more information on connections to this grand conspiracy we walked into, and a diamond to pay the guy who was about to give us a key so we could slip in and get the job done. So we go to the club. It's a very John Wicky type of mission, lots of thugs in suits, nice club location, samurai armors on display, medieval weapons and shit. We get through it all, find the diamond and the floppy disk, and make our way out. Loads of cops are circling the place and chase us. We successfully escape, and now it's time to go meet the contact. Give him the diamond, get more information in relation to the conspiracy, and regroup. But when we get there, we find Tommy instead. He whacked the contact and tries to convince us to stand down and join him because of the things that I laid out before. The old world is dying, Carter and the crew don't stand a chance against these people. Best thing Samson can do is give in, give Carter up, make his money, pay his debt to free his sister, and just keep quiet. No matter what choices you made before, you get no choice here either, and the interaction is exactly the same. Samson hates the idea, calls Tommy a traitor and a sellout, and then, well, you know, you gotta fight like 10 dudes on your way to Tommy, where you get a final fight against a homie. Bro dies gracefully, says everything he did, he did it for Samson too and his sister, and that he was glad that it was Samson killing him in the end. It was honestly supposed to be a big moment, you can tell, there's no doubt about it, but it fell flat because we only ever talked to Tommy like 3 times before this moment. And Cotter is even worse. Like, I actually had a connection with Tommy, however fleeting, there was more of a connection with Tommy than Cotter because you barely speak to Cotter. And also Tommy had a reason and a goal, while Cotter, there's just nothing, he's just a guy, he's the fixer, he sends you jobs, and that's it. You don't know jack fuck about this guy or anything really, even about your organization. There's very little to pick at here.
Wait. Tommy, no.
Gamby was right. The hood's finished. Carter can't see it. Fuck him.
And the double tap? Nate?
Nate'll be fine. We both know that Carter was always gonna have to be pushed.
Jesus Christ, what have you done?
The smart thing. I knew you couldn't.
Because I'm not a sellout.
Everyone's a sellout for the right price. It's not too late, brother. With that diamond, we could pay off Una's debt, run this city as a family.
You're a traitor, Tommy.
Have it your way. Just know this is on you.
We were brothers, T.
We still are. This was all for us, you idiot. Gamby, Crow Lane, the Grimskulls. You know how hard it is to get all of them pulling together? I built us an empire.
No. You betrayed us.
You want to talk about betrayal, motherfucker? You left me. You and Una bailed. I told you it was stupid, but you just had to go to St. Louis to get your paper up. Now you want me to cry you a river because it didn't work out? While you were gone, who looked after Carter? Me. Who kept track of his rackets? Me. Who put up with his small fry, dime store hood bullshit for more than 2 fucking years? Me. So I'm damn sure gonna be the one who gets paid now that his time's up.
I loved you, Tommy.
There's no reason that has to change, Samson. Like Father O'Malley always said, you're not your brother's keeper.
No, I am not.
Should've stayed out of town, Samson.
Fuck you, Tommy.
We could have it all, brother. Just like we always dreamed. You don't have to do this.
You killed us, Tommy. You know this only goes one way.
I swear, it was always meant for both of us.
I'm sorry.
For the record, I'm glad it was you.
Nothing ever really changes. The only thing for people like me is to keep going, keep grinding, keep doing the work. In Tyndalston, you can either curl up and die like a dog in the street, or you can fight the fuck back.
Something this game would have benefited from is fleshing these guys out more. All the more reason to go and put in some side activities and include them in them, like, I don't know, friend hangouts in GTA or something. But anyway, who cares? It's over. The game ends and the credits roll. Then you just get 2 phone calls, one from your sister, where you vaguely tell her that Tommy is gone and nothing more, so she doesn't know anything, and one from Cotter thanking you for your loyalty, and then all about how all that's left to do is just keep earning your money. When you finish paying your sister's debt, you get a phone call from her saying that she's been freed and is coming home. This was also one of those what the fuck moments for me, because when the game started and I was doing those boring missions, I could have sworn that the twist in this game would have been something where you finish paying the debt, and then you get another debt on top of that, maybe, or maybe they just whacked your sister anyway, and it would turn into a revenge story to go and get the bastards, because we actually have more dialogues with our sister than with these characters, or at least that's what it feels like. They're short phone calls, but they are there, and she's also referenced in various viewpoint things that you collect in the city. Also, there's interactable objects in your apartment, and at least one of them reference your sister too. But yeah, not much comes from it. Like, at the end of the day, the whole thing about your sister is also something that feels very separate and not tied to the story at all, even though it's also the main thing to play the game for, because you will be paying off that debt for various days. $100,000 on average, you make about, you know, $3,800 a day. You can make a little bit more if you do more jobs, but like maybe you can get up to 4 or 5K. So regardless, you will be playing this debt side thing much more than the main story, but nothing happens. It's just nothing happens, and in the story also nothing happens, and so there we go. That's it. That's Samson's awful story that just abruptly ends, leaving everything that was interesting hanging in the air as if nothing happened. Please note that Tommy was still a nobody. He knew the hit was coming, and he didn't know that you would be there. He even leaves the bar before the shooting happens, and he tries to get you to come with him to chat and smoke outside, but your character just chooses not to.
You gonna drink that gutter swill? Or you wanna smoke up with me?
Hey, you take that shit outside, T.
Oh, the smell bothers Carter's sensitive constitution. Let's go out back, Samson.
No, I'll pass, Tommy. Me and Carter need to catch up.
Your loss.
So Tommy knew, that's why he walked out, and Nate wasn't supposed to be hit, it was an accident. Carter was the one that was supposed to die, but regardless of this little shadow play that Tommy pulled while working together with that other gang, he was still a nobody. The story established a group of rich elites who have companies disappearing people and turning their homes into condos. Tommy ain't shit. Tommy's just one of the many cockroaches of Tyndalston. So when you whack him, this means nothing. It's not like you got closure from the story. This overwhelming force and entire conspiracy is still there. You have the floppy disk, which implies that you guys will use it eventually for something, but who cares? Damn story is already over and we got nothing. Let's finish this. This is why, even in the low price that it's in, it's a hard game to recommend. In truth, Liquid Swords does have a lot of potential. You can see it in bits and bobs while playing the game, and that's something that I can't say for other games that I've played, be them indies or at times even higher budget ones. With Samson, I see a vision, I see talent, I see something that can be fixed and polished to be easier to recommend, and I see problems that are born out of different issues than the stuff that we usually talk about here on the channel, which are largely unfixable since they're born of ideological issues or stupid financial decisions. Some studios, I don't know, man, they don't want to, or they don't know how to make video games anymore, or what the point of a video game should even be. Samson and Liquid Swords don't feel that way, and so that's why I didn't want to be so harsh. But it was impossible not to, because the story was what it was. And what made me even angrier was my second playthrough was significantly buggier than the first. I had to replay sections because scripted events would not trigger. With the church guy, I had to do it several times because I don't know what was going on, but when you catch up to him, you're supposed to interrogate him, and this would just not trigger. The NPC would just not do what's supposed to do where your interaction begins. He would just stand there, and then I would have to repeat the mission, and whenever you do that, you have to start over from the beginning. On another occasion, I was at the vampire clubhouse fighting the guards, and the two characters that are meant to be inside of their room until you open the door and the scene plays just walked outside. Then their doors locked and wouldn't open, and they wouldn't move. The scripting failed again or something. I don't know what exactly the issue is. I can only take a guess. This, among other gameplay issues, general jank, and a couple of crashes that just wore me down significantly, and so of course I can't sit here and be like, hey fellas, it's flawed, but there's something of value underneath, because it's not just flawed. Currently, it feels straight up unfinished. Now I looked into the studio and I did find a potential reason as to why, and basically fellas, you know all those ghost stories about the games industry being in a rough spot? Well, they're not just stories. Liquid Swords was founded back in 2020 and they initially got themselves some backing from NetEase, the big dog himself, Christopher Sundberg, who is an OG from the Just Cause studio, and some private investors. Initially, Samson was going to be way bigger than it is right now. They had ambitious plans for a bigger city, RPG systems built into the game, guns, more vehicles, more variety, base building, etc. But then the money started drying up due to the games industry shifting. Publishers and investors like NetEase started tightening their belts. There wasn't as much money going around and being offered to just about anyone for just about anything. So by 2025, Liquid Swords was forced to make a drastic decision. They fired about half of their staff, something Sundberg described as very difficult because they were like a family over there with a clear vision of where they wanted to go, and additionally, they had to significantly scale down the game, remove a bunch of stuff and reframe other stuff into making this a much smaller scale experience than the initial intended thing. I've had some viewers of mine express that this might just be another piece of indie slop cash grab, and while I can't recommend this game in the current state to you guys because I do care about your wallets, and it feels weird pushing something that isn't finished. Like if something isn't finished, isn't finished, you gotta finish it, it is what it is, or at least sell it as an early access thing. But again, while I can't not recommend it fully to you guys right now, what I can definitely say from playing this game and reading its story is that this is definitely not the case. Over here, we might actually have just a sad story where ambitions just don't meet the budget. A story where people break out of AAA to go do their own thing, but then the overall rough market conditions around gaming rear their ugly head and impact independent studios as well. It totally pile-drive their plans. But regardless of that, nothing excuses releasing a half-baked game that feels unpolished. While I can respect setting a lower price and tempering people's expectations going in as a show of respect and self-awareness for the players, it's still just stupid. First impressions are so important, and this game is crippling itself right off the get-go because of them. But anyway, as it stands, their decision to cut half the studio, scale down the game and release it right away has bought them more time. They have laid out that their plan is to keep working on Samson. It's a project that is near and dear to their hearts. It's something that they want to polish up, fix the issues, and add more onto. I don't know exactly what that entails yet. It's not like there's a roadmap besides fixing the game, but given their original plans for this project, I'm going to be keeping an eye on it and checking back in the future to see the state of the game. I'd be happy to make another video in the future recommending the game because it reminds me of games we used to get for the PS2 or something. You know, like the PS2 generation had a lot of games where you'd kind of just be at a store, look at the back of a box and go, that looks cool, and pick it up for like 10-20 bucks. The games weren't mind-blowing, like they weren't all God of War or Final Fantasy X, but some of them were entertaining enough, like a little in-between game. Samson kind of feels that way, a game from an age where not every game was expected to be the next game of the year, where small middle-of-the-road games existed. However, again, in its current state, it's still too rough and incomplete for that. I also don't like the idea very much, to be honest with you guys. I think that when a studio breaks out of AAA, they shouldn't just go and try to make a AAA game on their own. While the original ambitious idea for Samson is something that excites me and makes me think, oh my god, if this had actually worked out, we might have actually had a fantastic game on our hands. While that thought is very nice, at the same time, I also just can't help but thinking, why? Why did you have to go from opening a studio to releasing a massive game right away? Samson should have just been a small contained thing from the beginning, in my opinion. Something more manageable, and then from there maybe build up and make a bigger sequel. But anyway, that's it for this video. It's probably stupid to be making a video that is this long and detailed for a game next to nobody is aware of, but shit fellas, this is the only way I know how to make them. So there it is. That's Samson. Now I'm going to get the hell out of here. I'm going to get that ibuprofen, and I'm gonna play something else. Like the video if you enjoyed it, dislike it if you didn't, drop any feedback or questions down in the comments, and I'll be happy to get back to you. But either way, thank you very much for watching, and yeah, I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.